Saturday, we have another crafting afternoon. So Ju and Carol are organizing for next Saturday at 2 p.m. So there's some treats, crafts, food, and fun. So if you want to join, please reach out to Ju that is here or through our social media to join and spend some good quality time.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So this is very specific, this crafting afternoon. We are going to be making handmade Christmas cards to sell here and raise funds. And we're making them end of October so that if anybody wants to send it to Brazil, hopefully Canada Post strike is about to end, then the cards still will arrive in time for Christmas to Brazil if you want to send. And everybody's welcome. We had this event several years in a row before the pandemic, and there were always a lot of men participating as well. So it's a lot of fun. Thanks, Luis.
Good. Can we just connect here? So I know there are some new folks here today. The way that we run our Sunday mornings, we have kind of our announcements. Then I'm going to read harmonization text. And then we'll do a prayer, and then we'll go through our talks. As you can see, the layout here, this is an invitation for everyone to join, ask questions. There's, I don't know, we all know kind of the same, so please feel free to chime in. So after we finish the talk, we'll have a final prayer, and then we'll go to passes. And then it's when we end our morning. So today, because we're going to talk about the law of worship, I took a text from Vinha de Luz, or Vine of Light, free translation, ChatGPT. And the text is prayer and renewal. And what Emmanuel will say, if you don't know the collection from Chico Xavier, is where Emmanuel takes one passage from the gospel and then he elaborates and help us understand what is meant by that passage. And the passage that Emmanuel will do is from a letter from Paul to the Hebrews, 10:6, and the passage is, sacrifices and offerings for sin you have not desired. And Emmanuel will tell us, it is certain that every sincere work of spiritual worship uplifts the soul and ennobles our feelings.
He's just testing to see if the sound is working fine.
Okay. Supplication, born of remorse, brings us the blessing of consoling tears. Prayer in affliction makes us aware of our own shortcomings, helping us to discover the value of humility. Petition in pain reveals to us the sacred source of inexhaustible mercy. Prayer refreshes, relieves, exalts, enlightens, and elevates. But above all, it attunes the heart to the divine service. Let us not forget, however, that intimate and profound acts of faith are necessary and useful to ourselves. In essence, it is not the Lord who needs our devotional demonstrations, but we who must make use of the sublime opportunity of repetition, learning through the wisdom of life. Jesus awaits, above all, our spiritual renewal. If you have erred, you must seek the door of correction. If you have offended someone, make amends through reconciliation. If you have strayed from the straight path, return to the right way. If you have become troubled, restore your harmony. If you have harbored rebellion, regain self-discipline. In any state of imbalance, remember that prayer can bring you divine inspiration, broaden your spiritual vision, and offer abundant consolation. However, for the Lord, conventional or merely verbal attitudes are not enough. The Master grants us the gift and asks for our initiative. Therefore, in your days of struggle, make the vows and promises that please and benefit you, but do not forget the action and renewal that are truly fruitful in the divine work of the world and supremely pleasing in the eyes of the Lord. So let us pray. So let's connect our thoughts to God, to Jesus, our Master, to our guardian angels, and the entire spiritual team that guide all the activities of our second home of love, which is FSS, and in special this morning with this text highlighting the importance of us to connecting to the divine wisdom, to the divine power, to the divine will, to the divine love. Let us remain connected so we can absorb all the information that we exchange here today, and hopefully each one of us will leave here feeling a little bit more knowledgeable, hopefully feeling a little bit more content and happy, and we can, each one of us in our way, use this information and apply it in our daily lives. Let's pray that our meeting, the time that we are here together, are blessed with serenity, with peace, with love, and with light, and we have a fruitful meeting. So be it. All right, so today we're going to talk about the law of worship, or lei da adoração. And how do we understand this act of worship? And how do we understand the act of worship in our life? What does it mean? Is that only prayer? Or is that anything else? So, as sometimes I like to just to put some references. This talk is based in two videos from YouTube. One entitled Law of Worship from Cosme Massi. If you don't know, Cosme Massi is a highly educated person from Brazil. He's from Curitiba, and he is the one that developed Kardecpedia, which is that website that has all the information from Spiritism, and he has some great lectures, and I took this, based my reflections on one of his lectures about law of worship. And I want to encourage you, if you don't remember anything that we talked here today, or maybe I'm not doing a good job in transmitting all of that, but if you can find some time, search for Lei da Adoração, Law of Worship, in YouTube from Alberto Almeida. If you don't know Alberto Almeida is a doctor in Brazil, Spiritist, and he did a fantastic job in one of the seminars or conferences from Federação Espírita do Mato Grosso, where he talks about this law of adoration. And I will do my best to convey some of his reflections, but he does a fantastic job bringing this law of adoration into our lives. And if you were here a couple weeks ago where we talked about when a leader was here and talking about family and the importance of the health in our family, and he brings this law of adoration into our family. And what does it mean? I'm going to just bring one highlight that was very important for me, but you can, I encourage you to take a look. And he's very poetic, and you get involved the way that he describes and the way he talks. So, encourage you to take a look. And of course, we'll bring Spirit's book and a little bit of the book Thought on Life and Vine of Light. The goals and the reflections for today is, what does it mean to worship? How important, and is it important to worship? And whom should I worship? And when we'll talk about whom, we'll bring the family context to this whom. and sometimes how we might, and that was an important part for me, and how we might not fully understand who we should worship. But we'll talk more about it. So, in order to set a little bit of context, it's not news for us and for all of us that understand a little bit of the Spiritism doctrine. There's this say, watch and pray, right? Orai e vigiai. It's there all the time for us as an alert for us to be careful. Not only that, in various passages from the gospel, like Matthew, watch and pray so that you not fall into temptation. So it's very important that we are aware that we are connected. But then there's the watch, where we are aware of what's happening, and then the prayer. The Gospel according to Spiritism has a passage from chapter 27, item 22, that talks about prayer. And if you want to know about prayer, Sonia did, I think, a couple talks about what does it mean to pray, the components and the elements of a prayer. But there was one passage there that is very important, and the Spirits says that the primary duty of every human being, the first act that should mark their return to the active life of each day. So what does that mean? So we went to sleep, right? And then when we went to sleep, our spirit goes somewhere. Sometimes good places, sometimes not so good places. But what the Spirit is saying here, that every time that we wake up, our primary duty is to pray. So there's another importance of prayer. And they continue, almost all of you pray, but how few truly know how to pray. So, if I worship, there's a very tight relation to prayer. But is prayer the only way of worship? So that is kind of what got me thinking on what else? Oops. If prayer is such a, and we keep saying, if there's nothing we can do, we pray. If you can help someone that you don't know, you pray. So there's no shortage of information and courage for us to pray. But then there is a question in question 659 saying, what is the general character of a prayer? And the Spirit says, the prayer is a act of worship. The Spirits did not say the act of worship. So if prayer is an act of worship, what are other ways?
Singing.
Singing? Yeah. What else? What are other ways that we can practice worship?
Admiring nature.
Admiring nature. Charity. I was looking for that. Yeah. Charity as an expression of doing something for others and for ourselves, but beyond charity as an example, but an act of us worshiping, the divine laws. And the divine laws has many instances and activities. Doing charity,
Exercising the feeling of gratitude, and developing virtues, and making this law something that is part of our daily life. Taking care of myself, is that an act of worship? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about it, some examples and a specific context in family and for us, or what does that look like, this act of worship. So for me, as simple as it is, I came with this conception that worship equals pray. And that's it. But actually not, right? There's so many other ways that, as we just described here, as this act of worship. And as important as prayer, the divine laws, what are they? They are the guidelines for us to continue and to be happy, right? It's when we deviate on that is when we deviate from our own happiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a thought that just came to me is, if the divine laws are God's greatest creation, learning to love them is one of the purest ways to worship.
Exactly. Yeah. And connected to that, isn't Jesus presented us or introduced us to this big commandment: love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. So one way of loving God is the prayer, but I would go and say that even more important is loving God through the divine laws.
I was remembering, I think it was Emmanuel that said that it should be no difference between office and temple. So if you worship God, you would be worship Him, them, anywhere you are, like
Exactly.
as like the profession or the career you embodies and how you behave on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I was kind of debating which topic I would bring today. And I chose this one, but as you just said, this was in the como fala prefácio em inglês? In the preface of the book Thought and Life. There's no, and this is when I do because I'm doing this series with Thought and Life, when we study about education, and there is this invitation for us, and sometimes we establish a line between who I am in society, work, and who I am in my family or in the Spirit Center, but there's no line between. We are invited to be and to worship those laws no matter where, or no
like
matter.
We are Christians when we go to church or we go to a Spirit Center,
Exactly.
but we don't behave as one.
Yeah, or when you're driving, sometimes it's hard to worship or you worship something different when you're when you're driving. Yeah, case in point here. Yeah. Yeah, so this law, so the laws that we have, so if you don't know, Spirit's book, Livro dos Espíritos, last chapter or last section is all the laws. And guess what? What is the first law? The moral laws in the Spirit's book? The law of worship. That's the first law that Kardec's bring for us to study. Is that by chance? Kardec was like, oh right, randomize. Let's see, let's roll the dice and see which ones will go first. Yeah. No, there is a reason for that. And I think as we've been just talking about the way of worshiping God, and sometimes it's hard to worship God, because even if you go to Spirit's book, what is God? God is the primary cause of all things. Yeah, but what does that even mean? Like, I don't have the perception, it's not tangible. I want to picture God as a human being, someone sitting in a throne, but it's not that. But the divine laws is kind of the level of representation that makes it easier for us to adore, right? To worship. I don't know why I'm translating adoração to adore. Yeah. So, and this law will help us kind of understand and encourages us to even further investigate and educate ourselves. As we're educating it, we are worshiping that. So let's understand more a little bit, what does Kardec or the Spirits says about worship. So starting with question 649, what does worship consist of? In the elevation of thought to God. Through worship, a person brings their soul closer to God. So that's kind of this objective of this law of worship. We're bringing our thought, and we point here, but we know that our minds is in our souls. But the objective of this law is to get us closer to God, right? And we know that the mind is the mirror of our life. First chapter of the book Thought and Life. So why not have God and the divine laws as the mirror of our life? But this is, it's a mental process. It's not something, our relationship with God is not God being here or there or in Brazil, right? It's that connection mentally and spiritually. But you could ask, isn't God everywhere? God is omnipresent. Is that omnipresent? Yeah. So he's here. Why, if he's here, I'm connected already, aren't we? Yes?
I feel it's
Are you
like,
sure?
It's like an outlet that when you connect, it's like, putting the plug in and then you receive that. It's like I could be here but not listening to you.
Exactly.
Even though you're here, I'm not there.
Is your outlet always plugged?
Yeah, like he's here, but are we?
Is your
there?
outlet always plugged? And Cosme does a very good example. Because yeah, God is here. But are we always connected? And he gives an example which is very common in our daily lives now. Let's picture ourselves having dinner with family, friends, and I'm here, right? Social media or whatever. Am I connected? No, am I listening? Am I present?
Just in body.
Just in body. How do we translate that with our daily lives? Instead of picturing the table having dinner with our cell phones and not connected, what are things that happen in our life that disconnect us from worshiping and being connected from God?
Everything.
Yeah, we can list a laundry list, right? We are being bombarded with our thoughts are all over the place based.
Really, you have to start in your heart first.
Yes, exactly.
You're gonna get your connection,
Yeah, and
your syntony.
yeah, synergy, right? Alignment. And life is throwing us, media is throwing us, TV is throwing us a bunch of things for us to disconnect, right? For us to not be connected to the divine laws and to God. So there is this call for us then, for us to find that time when we think like, ooh, totally disconnected the entire day. I was negative the entire day, pessimist the entire day. That's okay. It will happen because we are in this world, and this world has several trials, several things that we are going to expiate to learn more. But it's okay for us to go through it and then, whoops, dinner table, I'm on the cell phone and I'm not present, and I'm not establishing that connection. So I'm not doing what I can to worship God in the sense of connecting to the divine laws. Another question. Does worship, that's a very interesting question. Does worship result from an innate feeling or from teaching? Do I have to go to school to learn to worship? Get a degree and a certificate? No. It's an innate feeling, like that of divinity. The awareness of one's weakness leads a person to bow before the one who can protect them. So, all of us, it wouldn't be very unfair. Can you imagine a few people with more capability to worship and us with our imperfections just looking, oh, this damn person that knows how to worship and I don't have that capability. No, all of us, it's like we have all those seeds in us, just waiting to be watered and whatever is required for us to do the work and do the job. And if God is the supreme intelligence, and we are sons of God, are we not intelligent? We are. By nature, we are intelligent because we're creatures of God and we have intelligence as well. So we have what is required to do that. And here is Simão Pedro. If you don't know him, he's a famous speaker in Brazil. And he brings the law of worship, divine laws, and happiness. So those three components. And he starts with question 614. What should be understood by the natural law or the divine law? And the Spirit says, the natural law is the law of God. It is the only true law for human happiness. It tells people what they must do or avoid doing. And they are unhappy only when they stray or they get away from it. Super simple. Follow the divine laws and we'll be happy. Oh, if it was that simple. So, if the natural law exists for our happiness, the law of worship is part of our happiness. So worshiping God and the divine laws, not us, will lead us to happiness. There's no exception. One law leads to happiness, another law doesn't lead to happiness. So this law is built and created to help us in our pursuit of happiness. Because when we're connecting to that, that is the big source of happiness. And the law of worship will be no different. Because when I started looking, it seems, I think in deep with me, the law of worship was kind of, in Portuguese we say, café com leite. I was like, yeah, it's like if you do, it's good, but kind of if you don't do, that's fine. But no, there's no like weight. We know we have the supreme law, but the supreme law, that's law of justice and charity, but this law is also fundamental and critical for us to get all the sources for us. And here, when we see the awareness of one's weaknesses makes us bow. And when I read this answer from the spirits, it brought me two virtues that this answer leads me to reflect. Which virtues do you think? One, I think it's a little bit clearer, and the second one, I had to think a little bit deeper.
I got it. What about faith? If you don't have a faith, how are you going to pray?
That's one, yeah.
Faith, hope, and charity.
Faith
Humility.
and confidence and humility. Humility and faith and confidence were two virtues that this answer, because sometimes is it easy just to recognize that I'm weak? No. Sometimes we do have that movement that I have all the power and I know what needs to be done. Right? So I think humility is a big, and I think we've talked that when we talked about the parable of talents, the humility to ask, the humility to recognize that we have some limited source of power and limited source of capability, but who else gets infinite source of power? God. Exactly. God has this infinite. So if I use all of mine, is that the end? No. So humility to ask, and faith and confidence, that's for me is what kind of drove me in that question, especially with the words recognize the weakness and bow. and really talk to God, surrender, and really have that conversation with God. And I really like Rosandro. Rosandro, when he's talking about, I can't remember which of the lectures, and he really encourages, it's like, have an honest conversation with God. Not something, oh dear Lord, master of all masters. No, it's like you're talking to your dad. Say, hey dad, like I'm struggling. Like this is taking all the energy, and help me do something. And without some like colloquialism or some recipe, is have that honest conversation that we are his son and we deserve to be happy, and we will be happy, and we will face some of the struggles, and he's there to help us when we exhausted and use all our energy and our resources to do what needs to be done.
Please, just had another thought when you asked about the law of worship being the first. And I think it goes along with the reasoning of there's a sequence to the Beatitudes or Bem-aventuranças in Portuguese.
Good point.
There's a sequence for all of that.
Mhm.
So that sequence brings me the idea of how can I learn if I have no humility?
Mhm.
How can I learn? So if you follow the order of the 10 divine laws there are in the Spirit's book, we're going to see that humility is going to be the base of everything.
Yeah.
Because if I think myself good enough already or better than most,
Yeah.
how am I going to be able to bow? How am I going to be able to surrender and think, this is the answer I'm looking for, that is going to lead me
Yeah.
to my happiness,
Yeah.
that is going to lead me to, what Jesus invited us, right? Come to me, all who are weary, and I'll give you rest.
Exactly.
So how can I have that rest
Yeah.
if I can't even bow, if I can't even surrender? So in my mind, one of the reasons why it's going to be the very first one, because it's really that thing of surrendering, of the honest conversation,
Yeah.
saying, Father, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Father, I'm weary. Like there's a heavy burden on my shoulders. How can I better this? How can I improve myself and feel lighter?
Exactly. That's a very good point. Yeah. Thank you. Hood.
If you put our trust in God, I think it was the best step. Just trust.
Yeah. That confidence. Yeah.
Just give everything yourself. Just trust in God, and
Yeah.
it's just like that's surrender.
Surrender. Yeah. And I think, in addition, kind of as an addition to your thought, that humility to ask, and if you don't kind of exercise that, you not even know what to ask.
Yes.
And then you are so connected to the world things that we have here, and you start asking for things that actually are not required, right? It's like, God, give me that car, or give me that thing, right?
And you end up just with, a financing of 10% APR.
Yeah.
So be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. And instead of us asking for things, again, every time that I give examples of material things, it's not that we should not have it. There is a purpose, but it should have a balance, and we should know what to ask. And especially when you're praying or worshiping, is asking for that strength and asking for that capability to endure whatever we are enduring, right? Sometimes we say, yeah, just keep me away from all the evil or all the trials. Is that the right thing to ask? Because we are in a planet of trials and expiation. And instead of us asking to be just removed from it, how about we ask to have the strength, the courage to develop all the virtues and what is required to go through it? Otherwise, how would we learn, right? How would we go through this experience and renew ourselves and improve ourselves for the next of their lives? So in addition, and there is the humility, and there's also this confidence, this faith, and this trust. And you might have, if you're here, you might have seen, I always bring this passage, I sound like a broken record, when Emmanuel talks about faith and trust. Emmanuel is very, and I love how Emmanuel is very direct. There's no half words with Emmanuel. He's like, yeah, this is what it is, yeah. And when he talks about trust, he talks about us being aware of not falling in this chronic pessimism. This chronic pessimism that is sometimes instilled in us, where we think that this world is going to end. There's no more solution for this. We're doomed to fail, right? Emmanuel doesn't say that we should just wash our hands and let it go. No, Emmanuel says you need to be careful. You need to plan. You need to prepare yourself, but you also need to trust for the things that you have no control of it, and be aware if the chronic pessimism is being instilled into us through fake news, social media, TV, and all of that, and how that is blocking our minds and our thoughts to connect. Because how would you say, if you were pessimistic, is it possible to worship? What is the mental thought vibration that we are generating? Complaint.
You'll worship your pessimism.
Yeah, you worship your pessimism. Good, yeah, that's a very, you just feed in that pessimism.
Or I don't deserve it.
Or I don't deserve it, exactly.
So there's a passage from the Bible. Remember when Peter was walking the water? He wasn't giving all his faith to Jesus, and then he was sunk. So that's a good example of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right now.
Believing and
Yes.
trusting it, exactly. But if Emmanuel says what not to do, he'll tell us what to do. So what he says in what to do is from the book Thought and Life. And he's very direct. We cannot therefore shape any achievement without a positive attitude of trust. And Emmanuel doesn't say one or two achievements. He said any. There's no way for us to achieve something if we don't cultivate that attitude of trust. So but I'm not saying here that I'm gonna be laughing 24/7 and be happy 24/7. That's not what we are saying, right? Of course we'll have moments that it's not possible. We're going through things that are heavy, that are challenging, that requires a lot of our effort. But being mindful of that trust in God, of that trust in ourselves, and that trust in our own life, that we are capable of going and enduring whatever we need to endure. Because if we deviate and we get into the pessimistic, that the consequences will not be the ones that we're looking for.
On that note, one thing that I always try to think about when I'm talking to God is, God, please help me stay lucid and aware.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like we're in this fog and everything is kind of trying to confuse us, to pull us down, put us down. But when you're aware, you know who you are, you know that He is with you, and then you kind of see through like the clouds, but it's like an illusion. And another thing is, if I have to go through a moment that is very difficult and I'm scared, I always ask, like, I know you're there, but show me your presence. Make me feel your presence. And the interesting thing is, like, the pain doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. The fear is still there. And you feel that the power with you, that energy. So it's like you were saying, it's not to remove the obstacle. It's like, help me go through
the
go with me.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. It's exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in that state of positive, that's when our mental house is organized, it is in the right tune, in alignment to receive all the inspiration from God through our guardian angel. That we all, every single one of us, we have a superior spirit from us helping us, right? We have our guides. And if we are in that attitude of trust, that's when we can welcome that thought. But if you're in that pessimism, we have like a wall, not a physical, but we will not be able to receive that.
Yeah, like Alice said, it's the plug.
Yeah,
You connect.
yeah. So question, if we take the law of, so we have some, action, reaction, not action, action, reaction.
Cause
So,
and effect.
cause and effect, Jesus. There's always a consequence for an action. So what would be the consequence of us not fulfilling or abiding or following the law of worship? What is the consequence? If I put my finger in something hot, it hurts. So I have to remove my finger from the stove or something hot. But what is the consequence for us not fulfilling this law of worship?
I think
Mission failed.
What's fail?
Mission failed.
Mission fail. What does that look like?
I think you're gonna feel really lonely all the time, and that's impossible to go through. You know.
Exactly. We don't have the resources to complete that mission. We are not accessing the resources and everything that God has made available to us to complete that. So there is a less chance of success even that our incarnation is successful and that we complete everything that we need to complete in terms of making myself better as we. So we're passing. There's like, you have this store of resources all for us and it's like free. You don't need a credit card. You refuse ourselves to enter that and pick all the resources that are there that can make us go through a challenge or go through something. So we're wasting a big opportunity for us to be successful, right?
I also feel like, building on your point of resources, you know, there are lots of laws which you can choose to embrace and choose to avoid. And certainly this one as well, you may do it in a different way than the Spirit's book and God would intend. But I think this is one of the few where you are going to fulfill this one way or the other. You will worship something. Everybody
point, yeah.
worships something.
Yeah.
And I heard that recently from a few times from actually Jordan Peterson, who he was speaking in regards to just faith in general and specifically atheists, but his point was that everybody worships something. It's just a question of what that thing will be, and it led me to an inspiration as to, even in my own life, that, you know, in terms of this law and getting back to that idea of resources and what it is that you draw in, you know, a good way to gauge, even in my own life, I was reflecting on this maybe as to what might be a good definition of what it is that we worship, is to take this, the idea of worshiping God, of worshiping the love of God, of worshiping the faith in God, and put that alongside anything else. And the easy one to do, because I think it's one that very much drags us all in so quickly, is money.
Mm-hmm.
And put money, like a vat of money, a table full of money alongside, and you could either have that or you could have that with God. And which of those two things will your heart tend to first? That's what you worship primarily. And when you get to the 10 Commandments, and that's why even as Jesus restated them, and essentially just grouping them, because the first 5 really have to do with God, and the next 5 has to do with us in relationships. And so what Jesus did is he really just combined them all and made it all a lot easier for us to understand, the basic understanding. At least some people interpret it that way. But the idea of those first 5 is to just completely surrender yourself to God. And if you can place anything in your own life and compare the two and feel that there's anything that your heart would be drawn to first before God, then that might be a sign as to what it is you worship, and those are the resources you're going to be bringing into your life, which may be helpful in some ways, but as you rightfully pointed out, it likely is not going to be as sophisticated and perfect and complete as your worship in God would be.
Yeah, good point. Agreed, yeah. So, talking a little about who you worship and how you worship, right? So does God prefer those who worship Him in one way rather than another? There's a right way to do it. And the Spirit says, God prefers those who worship Him from the bottom of their hearts with sincerity. And every time that we talk about this here, it's all about our intention and how sincere we are. Doing good and avoiding evil. Isn't that like one of the practices of the worshiping divine laws? To those who believe, they honor Him through ceremonies that do not make them better toward their fellow beings. All people are brothers and sisters and children of God. He calls to Himself all who follow His laws, whatever their form they use to express. It doesn't mean if it's in church A, B, C, D, or in the Spirit Center or whomever. It's about our heart. It's about our intention and the sincerity that we bring to our thoughts, to our prayer, and the actions that we do in our everyday life. And there's this passage here for us immigrants. Do not ask them if there's a form of worship more fitting than another, for that will be like asking whether it's more pleasing to God to be worshipped in one language rather than another. There's no difference between worshiping Portuguese, Spanish, English, or whatever language. Once again, songs reach Him only through the door of the heart. It's our heart that will say, and we know in our conscience how well we are worshiping God.
Can I say something, Luis?
Yeah.
To that sense, like you said, we immigrants, sometimes we hear like families saying that they have a hard time, for example, doing the gospel at home in English, because the kids speak English better than Portuguese, and let's be honest, it's hard to understand the gospel according to Spiritism in Portuguese.
Yeah.
For us, let alone for our kids.
Yeah.
So, and some people say, oh, I can't pray in English, and that's what I always say. Even if it's not the beautiful words you would know in Portuguese, whatever is in your heart, even if it's like broken English, it doesn't matter. It's what's in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That intention, that counts. That energy comes out regardless of the words.
Yeah. And it's like having that conversation with your father, right? It's having that talk. It doesn't need to use different words. It's that connection that comes from the heart. And the simple words, whatever words, will make sense. And God will understand. There's no way that He will not understand. So I want to bring now what Alberto Almeida talks about worship. And he brings a very, for me, close to my heart point on the difference between worship versus idolizing or idealizing. When sometimes we get confused in who we worship. And one example that was very close to my heart is he uses the example of family. And how sometimes us parents, we got a little bit confused in who we should guide our children to worship. Because sometimes that we have that impression, or we educate our children to worship me. Holy moly, who am I? I am this imperfect spirit here, making a lot of mistakes. As a father, as a son, as a friend, as a member of society. And sometimes there are spirits that are incarnated in our family that they are even superior than us. There's a reason. Every family has their arrangement. It's all being very much calculated. And sometimes I will provide a direction to my kid that is not right. And that kid needs to kind of feel confident that if I'm not giving something right, he can reflect and ask and go through the right path. And also, sometimes the way we are educated through so many things that happen in our own this life as a kid, sometimes in one example that he uses is maybe there's my kid, I'll say, if someone hit you, hit him back. Is that the right way is that according to the divine laws? No. And that kid needs to understand, of course, there needs to be respect, right? Honor your parents, your mother and your father. But worship is for the divine. Respect to parents, yes, but the worship is for the divine. And it's important, as we are here in a Spiritist house, importance for us as parents, if you're a parent, to guide the kids into following Jesus, who is the best representation of all the laws that God have created, and guide them into following Jesus, into following if we believe that this doctrine has the answers or has the moral conduct for us to live a good life, a life that leads to happiness, to guide those kids to follow that as well. And he kind of uses a super fun example when he was talking to his grandson. And he asked his grandson, like, who is the hero, or who is the best hero, the superhero in the world? And the grandchildren said, Spider-Man. And it was funny because now my kid is in the Spider-Man phase now. And he was like, oh, no. And he was like, no, but who else? That's not it, the Hulk. And he said, no, it's you, Grandpa. I said, oh my God, no. And then he started talking, what about Jesus? Jesus like Spider-Man. He does like this and spreads love and cures someone. So it was fun how he was describing in a simple example of that kid idolizing Spider-Man and using kind of his vibe there to lead and kind of to translate into Jesus, like using the same words, like kind of, it's what he understands. It's like, it's the web, it's the teias do Homem-Aranha. And how can that help that his grandchildren, that kid, to start thinking about our Master? And then he continues. The next day he said, who is the superhero, the best superhero? And the grandchildren said, it's Jesus. So he remembered. The kid remembered from a couple of days just that simple interaction that he had, and kind of re-signifying and kind of guiding that kid into following our Master, our Jesus. So I think I didn't do justice, and I encourage you to watch, because he talks way more and we're out of time. But he talks about how the law of worship also help us in our moral development, right? He uses 3 things on kind of in our, I didn't change at the top, kind of in our process of self-discovery. We all have so many things that we went through, right? So something is done to us, and then we reflect or we do something to what was done to us, right? Someone offended us and we decided to take one route, offend back or whatever. He added kind of this 3rd bullet because we might have done already. Someone offended us, I offended back, or I hit it back. Does that stop? Is that the end? No. I like what he had is what I want to do with what I have already done with what was done to me. So I hit it already. Am I going to punish myself because I hit it back already? Do I have a second or a third or another chance to change or to forgive or to say sorry or to apologize into an act? And isn't that an act of worship?
Yeah.
A worship to ourselves. Not in the sense of worshiping Louise, but worshiping the laws that help me transform whatever I've done already to what people had done to me. And each one of us here has our own history, our own struggles and trials and expiation and everything. And each one will know some of the things that we are going through. But I thought that reflection of the laws, worshiping those laws, and how those laws help me go through this life, and what happened 43 years ago with Luis that I have to deal with, that I have to reconcile myself, that I have to change so I can learn what not to do again if that situation shows up again. So I know what to do. And worshiping God and worshiping those laws can help me to make something different and search, and at least has a bigger chance of success in getting different effects to the causes that I might still be doing it. Yeah. And that's it. That's the law of worship. So I think it's an invitation for us as sons, brothers, sisters, parents, members of society, as you mentioned, in the work, in the Spiritist Center, is how that connection to God and how that connection to the divine laws is guiding us. And what Attila was saying, what am I worshiping? What am I directing the energy and my thoughts to worship that is helping me or hindering me in advance and making me a better spirit or a better person? And how, as simple as it is, but as challenging as it is, following those divine laws are the guides for us for happiness. And worship is one part of it. So an invitation for all of us to continue our prayers, because watch and pray, it is important, but also how we're transforming or changing the daily acts of our lives that align with worshiping God and His laws.
And I think just a few thoughts here, Luis, too. I was thinking about what Attila said in regards to we are always worshiping something, right? Like, and we become whatever we are worshiping. So there is always this option, and nowadays I think we live in a very sensitive time where there are all like those false prophets and idols and lots of things to worship.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see in regards to mental health, like the farther we are from the divine laws, the more misery and unhappiness and anxiety, depression, and we mentioned, and it's very challenging. But there are so many options out there, and as parents, like these is concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Because the example Attila was bringing, it's not only like you worship God or money, but you worship those people that supposedly they're idolized and they are in a position of success.
Mm-hmm.
And where does that bring us?
Yeah.
And in my mind, we are just getting farther and farther from whatever we need to be reconnecting, especially in this whole transition age
Yes.
era that we are
We're
going through.
Absolutely.
Can I share something?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be back here.
Glad you're back.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just watching this video. I was in Brazil now for 2 months, and I watched this video on Instagram that has everything to do with this relationship between cause and consequence. And I watched the video like 3 times because I wanted to actually hear every single word I want to share with you guys, because it might bring you the same kind of reflection here. But the guy was saying, and it's very strong, but watch out for your thoughts, because they will turn into words. Watch out for your words, because they will turn into actions. Watch out for your actions, because they will shape your character. And watch out for your character, because that will lead you to your destiny. So, do you realize that your destiny starts with your thoughts? And so, what are your thoughts right now? Where are your thoughts right now? And more importantly, what kind of destiny are you paving based on those? So that helped me a lot to reflect on that. And what are those thoughts? Where are those thoughts? It would be so, and I'm gonna use a very controversial word right now, but it would be so easy after my dad passed to just fall under a very pessimist route. After getting divorced, it would be so easy to just, oh, I'm alone here. And listening to that like made a lot of sense. How I was always putting effort, going the challenging road after those situations happened in my life. And it made a lot of sense because that's the kind of destiny I'm willing to go through. And it always starts on the thoughts.
We've been studying in our mediumship group about thoughts, and in the studies that we have been doing, is thought is actually material. It's material. It's just that we can't see yet, and we don't have the mechanisms to see. It's very subtle. It's very subtle, but it is material. And Jacobson, who is one of the speaker in Brazil, he says that the moment we think, we are materializing like pictures. It's pictures out there of all the things that we're thinking. So thought, and that's why one of the reasons I love the book Thought in Life, Pensamento e Vida, if you want to read. It's all, and it starts how thinking, as you're just describing that chain, he describes very similar, how everything starts in our thinking. What happened with this material thing, our actions, just start. The world, this world that we live in, started where? In God's thought. So it's truly, absolutely right. And our being mindful where our thoughts are, not in the pessimistic. Of course, if we sleep a few times, it's okay, but be aware, because thoughts are extremely powerful, and everything starts in our thought.
And the law of affinity too, right?
Whatever
the law
we're
of
thinking,
attraction,
yeah.
You attract
attract.
things that are
Yeah.
synced in tune to whatever you're thinking, even though you might not be aware of
Aware
your
of it.
thoughts yet.
Yeah.
And it's energy.
Yeah.
It influences everything and everyone around you, and even those who passed away, your thoughts, your energy you're sending will influence them.
Yeah. So it's very important for us to take care. Take care of your thoughts. Yeah. All right. Good. Let's go for a final prayer. Let's turn on the music. And, we'll do a final prayer, and then we'll go for passes. All right. So as we learned about prayer, as we learned about thought, as we learned about our connection to the divine, let's continue our thoughts, our prayer connected to God, to our Father that has everything that we need for us to endure and to succeed in this life as incarnated here on this planet, together with the best representation of all the laws and all the behaviors and thoughts, Jesus, our master, our model, and our guide. And finally, to our guardian angels that provide all the intuition and the advice every single day for us to continue this journey of improving our immortal spirits. And be thankful. Thankful for this opportunity that we had to exchange thoughts, to exchange knowledge, and hopefully everyone will leave here with the seed planted in their souls, in our souls, to continue with this work, improving ourselves improving our family, improving our society, so this planet can become a better planet. And ask for God, Jesus, and the spiritual team that continues blessing all the activities of this house, of our FSS, and blessing every single of us that who are here today, and all of the others that who might not be able to come today, and every immortal spirit in this planet, that we have another week of light, of love, of faith, trust, and confidence, and of course humility, to ask for help and to continue on this work. So be it.
Okay.